Hi, how are you? Well, so I wanted to record some videos about stuff that I have been writing, I have been reading, and that I want to share. I always want to make sure that I share the best material, the best advice. I am a lawyer, but that doesn't mean that I am not an entrepreneur as well. So as a business owner, I try to keep up with stuff that make my life just easier, and I realized something this week that really blew my mind and I wanted to share. So I always thought that when you are more experienced, you make better decisions. And it is true, but then I read this article about the six hat perspective regarding, and you have to look for it. Let me I'll tell you. It's the six thinking hats method. That is the precise word. Look for it. It's amazing. But basically what it says is that when you make decisions, you don't make mistakes because of lack of experience, but because of lack of perspective, and actually perspectives with an S. So I'm going to tell you in these videos what I discover, and then you can decide if it is great or not and to apply it. But I loved it. So the first hat is the blue hat, and it is connected to clarity. And basically idea is that it's not a bad idea. It's actually lack of direction. So when you're thinking with this hat, you're asking not on the main idea, but you're asking on the next step. And I thought it was so important because sometimes we do have, especially with big projects, right? So we do have a goal, but we don't ask about that next specific step. And I see that as a lawyer, I see it a lot when clients are trying to make, let's say, a big investment, or when there are several partners, and then we come into the room and we're talking for an hour about the big things, but nobody's talking about who's going to submit the application to the lender to get the loan. And that is how things get frustrated. So I love this blue hat. It's just one step, one single step, and who is in charge of that next step. Clarity and direction. That is lovely. The next hat is our white hat. And in the previous blue hat, we talk about the big ideas, but the lack of clarity on the specific task. This one I love too, because it is connected to the more specific foundation or support to the great idea. So it tells you to think about the concrete things that you need to achieve. And this is how it looks, right? So we go back to the example of, let's have a big project, we're going to buy a property, something like that, and then you have a big team and everybody's talking about the end goal, right? So to close on this property, and we are not discussing about the cost. We're not talking about whether this company has the amount of money to pay the monthly let's say utilities, the loan, how much is the loan, how much is the interest. And I think those concrete things are the ones that frustrate plans, even when they are already in motion, and it is just heartbreaking. I see it especially in closings when you already are approved for the loan and then you see the actual numbers, and it is heartbreaking because it's usually the small stuff that it makes something unaffordable. For example, you have the money to pay for the loan and for the equipment, but then you realize that you're gonna have to pay X amount of insurance, and that is out of the budget. That is so sad. I love the white hat. Get the details, the concrete, the numbers, dollars and cents, to make sure that you have the concrete foundations that you need to be able to make these decisions. I love it. Okay, so the next one, it's actually a happier one, right? We're talking about numbers and then the concrete foundations. This one is the red hat, and of course red, it's emotions. And this is equally important. We have to ask, how do I feel about this? right? How does my team feel about this? And the way that this looks, it's, for example, we're talking about this project, right? That we're gonna buy a property. So we already work into, okay, the concrete steps, who is doing what, and then we work into the concrete foundations, the money. Do we have the money? Do we have time? We're building, whatever. And then we're looking into, okay, is my team going to be comfortable in with this change? Do we have to move from a place that we love? How are we feeling about this? And I think that this is important. People tend to overlook, but emotions actually is emotions, right? So it's energy in motion. And as an attorney that represent business owners, I see how important it is to have your team and yourself actually feeling great about going to work. We spend a lot of time working, and if we hate it all the time, it is just impossible. It is not possible to make something prosper if that's something, it's something that you don't love. So this red hat, the hat of emotion, it's equally important. It's overlooked, and this is something that I have been trying to bring back to business. Joy, happiness, it's actually a currency. Let's bring it back and let's keep that in mind. Our next hat is the black hat. And I didn't love it at the beginning when I read it, because I tried to be a positive person, but still, I am a lawyer, so I tend to think about bad things. I try always to make them look better or explaining in a positive look. But the reality is that there is nothing better than preventing issues. And the only way of doing it is in trying to foresee what can go wrong. So this black hat, it's actually that mindset of looking into what can go wrong here. And if we go back to our example that we're using, right? So we're getting this property, everybody's working on details, like we are working step by step. Let's think about how we can get out of this contract if we don't get the loan. This will be the black hat thinking. How can we properly ensure how much money do we need? Is there anything close to this property that will increase the potential for liability, right? For let's say, is the parking lot really close to a dangerous street? How is crime in the area? These kinds of things. And I know it is not super nice, it's not the happiest thing, but if we don't look into these details, we cannot protect our businesses. And this is something that I heard from a very dear friend that sells insurance policies. And he told me insurance is actually the only business that sells happiness. And I'm like, how? He's like, look, happiness comes from having peace of mind. And then if you can calculate the risk and then create a policy that will be sufficient to face that risk, you're actually giving yourself peace of mind and you're giving yourself happiness. It completely changed my mind to the insurance industry. And it is true. If you can calculate your risk, you can actually calculate what you need to make sure that you will be able to face the risk. So it's not the nicest, but it is super necessary. Let's think with our black hat and look for what can go wrong. Okay, so our next hat, it is the yellow hat. And my pronunciation is funny, so you're probably thinking, oh, what color? Yellow. So this one, it was actually funny for me because it sounds silly, but it is so true. So your question when you're thinking with the yellow hat, it's not what can go wrong, right? Like our black hat, they're not so positive things, but what if it goes well? And as a lawyer, I see it all the time, and this is something that you need to think, especially if you have partners, right? What if this is $1 million idea. What if we're gonna make a lot of money? And what is next? So, what is after success? So, if everything that we're dreaming, everything that we are planting comes to fruition, what are we going to do? How are we going to expand? Are we going to try to sell this company? Are we going to expand on this business? If let's say that, to go back to our example with the building, okay, so we buy the building, it's perfect, it's amazing, and then it is so great that our company grows, and then we need a second building. Do we have a space to buy a second building? Or it's a product, like, if everything goes great, are we gonna have a line of these products, from the shampoo, or we're gonna move into the conditioner? All of these things. So this hat, thinking with this hat, the yellow hat, makes you think about opportunity, and that is a great thing. So dream on and think with your yellow happy hat. Okay, so our last hat, the green hat, and this is something that I actually struggle with, and I have been trying to change a little bit. Like, for example, making videos is something that I didn't do. But the green hat calls you on thinking from a creativity perspective, right? So let's say that we already have the more concrete steps, right? That we talk about. Even the black hat, we look into what can go wrong. But this one doesn't call on selling more. It actually calls from how can I make this different? You can different in the model that you use or a different product. How can I stand out? And this is something very challenging, especially for more conservative professions. So let's say for me, a lawyer, an accountant, business consultants. How can we make our profession different, right? The lawyer is a lawyer, but we have to think, and this is something that is going to be my homework too. How can we stand out? And I think that it goes to service, customer service for service providers, right? Or for products. How can I make this different? How can I create it different, or how can I create a completely different product or market it from a different perspective? So I actually love it, and I think that right now we all have to wear this green hat very, very often. Our world is changing, the marketplace is changing. So we all have to use this and actually invest some time to recreate our business. We do have to change. The person that is not going to change, the business that is not going to change, is going to be left behind. So let's just think with our green hat and think, how can we make it different? That was the last one, and I hope that you like these videos and that they help you. My name is Paola Vergara. I am a business attorney, and you can find me in vergaralegal.com. Bye.